Welcome to another episode of TeqTalk. On today's episode, we will be discussing something that a lot of organizations are chasing for, but only a few truly understand. That is from static SaaS to dynamic agentic platform. And joining me today is Ashwin Raj, who is the former CEO at ezCater. Thank you so much, Ashwin, for joining the show.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here on your podcast.
Oh, absolutely. We are humbled to have you here. All right. So, Ashwin, if you talk about last three organizations where you have contributed, your contribution is massive and transformational. So, you have scaled Lyft at the toughest time, I would say, during the pandemic time.
Yep.
And ezCater, with the help of AI, you have moderated it so much that it is in another level. You have scaled it to different level. And if you talk about Amazon Pay, you have made it to $1 million platform. So how did you do that?
You're very kind, and thank you for the opportunity as well to share my experiences and thoughts. I think I've been lucky throughout my career in terms of having the opportunities that these great companies have presented to me. And I don't think it's one individual. It is always a team, and I'm grateful to have had amazing teams who have had the passion, the motivation, and just the desire to build new things and to deliver new products. And this is even before, Amazon. Even at Lyft, I've had the opportunity where there's a whole amount of innovation and invention that goes on. And I think that's what makes it successful. At the end of the day, it's the coming together of a group of people where your desires, passions align. And, you align it to the company objectives and goals. And so all of these, I would say, I cannot take credit. It is due to a whole group of people who made all of this possible.
Yeah, very well said. You are a great leader who uplifts others as well. So I think this is something for all of us to learn. Very, very motivating. So if I talk about your career, like last three organizations, one theme which stands out is transformation through intelligence, right?
Right.
Yeah. And right now we are seeing a wave of SaaS companies moving towards more agentic platforms. If you talk about enterprise companies or even mid-size or small size, everybody's focus is on to add the flavor of agent in them. So when you were with these organizations, what were the first kind of signals which you detected or found which provided you to, go on to the dynamic platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think all companies do have some form of data science, analytics, models. They've been static, linear models and with predetermined workflows, step-by-step processes, right? And the challenge has always been, how do we execute using this? We get more information, more data comes in, you adjust these models and workflows, and then you improve upon it. But it's been a very human plus existing static models that have allowed us to do this. I think the agentic architecture and the workflow allows it to be much more nonlinear and autonomous, self-learning, and they make their own decisions. And I think that's an amazing evolutionary step. So in all these organizations, the bare bones are there. The data is there. It may be structured, unstructured. Yeah. A lot of organizations are dealing with it. And I think it starts there. And so where in all these places, we've looked at existing data within the organization where we can determine what needed to be done.
Right.
And it's pretty obvious. The answers are in there.
Yeah.
How do you go and figure it out? And how do you, initially it was done with teams of people and data scientists and engineers and so on. But now these agents can access the unstructured data, structured data, and be able to determine and take actions. So I think there's a transitionary path that all of these organizations have to go through and make that adjustment and leap. But I think they all have elements of this in place. So it's not such a tough leap to make. There's a willingness to be able to do it and overcoming of the fear in order to make that happen. Yeah. And that comes from leadership. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, leaders are the ones who are going to help stimulate that step within that organization. And leaders need to be comfortable doing it. And they need to also be comfortable with the downstream impacts of those outcomes, which may have both a technology, a people, and a cultural impact. Mm-hmm. And leaders should be prepared to address that. But I don't think there's a choice here, Jazz. I think that
has become a necessity.
It has to be done. Yeah. Either you do it or somebody else is going to do it. Mm-hmm. And they're going to do it with far fewer people and do it in a better way because they're at a different starting point. Yeah. So I think the time is now. And you have to get on this train, otherwise you're going to be left behind.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that data is one of the important factors, and it is. Even you will agree that without clean or structured or proper data, well, now unstructured data is also there, which can be fetched easily. Without all of these clean data, even the best agent cannot perform well. Right?
Absolutely right.
And there's so much to talk about data. So during your tenure at Lyft or ezCater, what were the couple of challenges with data you found and how was that resolved? It's a big generic question because there could be many challenges, but if you have any specific use case.
I think in terms of the data itself and the need for it, in terms of especially in the shift to this agentic model and architecture, I think the biggest challenge that we faced was the data was there, mm-hmm. you could analyze it, but what insights are you drawing from it? That was the biggest, most important thing. Yeah. You don't need, dashboards with thousands of lines or anything like that, right? What is the insight? What is the data telling you? And what do you need to then address mm-hmm. in order to either help the user, the consumer, the driver, the supply side? That is what is most important. Yeah. Surprisingly, this is the most difficult thing for organizations to get to because you get caught up in the data itself and the plethora of data. You do not pull the insights from it. And you do not pull it in a way to simplify it to say, based on these insights, these are the actions that need to be taken. And it seems such a simple thing, but it is a big gap because we generate data for the sake of generating data. Yeah. Everyone loves dashboards and a lot of times you're sitting there and looking at all these dashboards and there's thousands of numbers and you're like, what does this all mean? Why is this important? And so simplifying it to what does this mean for the company? What does this mean for the user? What does this mean for the product? What does it mean for the service? I think that's the most important piece. Mm-hmm. So in terms of this agentic architecture, that is one more level further because here there is a continuous feedback loop. There's a real-time performance. There's planning. There's adaptive nature because other inputs are coming in. And so now this data becomes even more important because these agents are relying on that data in order to make those decisions. Yeah. And they'll be better at it because they can go access large number of data in order to take that action. But then every action that the agent is taking is also going to be an input into the data set.
Right. So loop.
It's a continuous loop. And every action, correct or incorrect, needs to be logged, needs to be monitored, needs to be checked. And that becomes, self-learning. Yeah. And I think that's the power of this. I actually think that this is going to sound blasphemous in a way, but I think that the machines are going to do it better than humans. Yeah. And that's one of the advantages.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of things you said and a lot of questions in my mind are coming. I'll go one by one. So you talked about feedback loop, which is so important, right? We talk about RAG a lot, but actually if you see the real flywheel is also your feedback loop.
Okay.
So if you talk about companies like YouTube, from basic video hosting platform, it has become the world's #1 content generating platform.
Completely.
It's because of the feedback loop. Watch next, a recommendation engine.
Okay.
And yeah, that is so important. At Lyft, ezCater, Amazon Pay, do you have some examples of some feedback loops which you have implemented?
For sure. I'll actually use the food delivery aspect of it, which kind of overlaps the Lyft and ezCater worlds and the DoorDash and Uber Eats worlds of it. So think about a situation where all of these systems, whether that's for human mobility or whether that's for food delivery, systems are trying to determine peak times, volumes, order volumes, or ride volumes, or food order demands. And they're trying to predict at what time is it going to peak, and they're trying to determine how much supply you need. And this will vary by time of day, this is day of the week. It will adjust because of weather or other events that are happening. So from a system point of view, and today, even without the agentic architecture, this is something that all these companies try and determine. And they then try and determine how do you manage that level of demand. If it is peak based on certain geolocations where it's going to peak, you then have to have the right amount of supply there. Right? And for that, now you need to understand how do you incentivize. So these are marketing systems that are now going to go out to get the supply in place at that time of day and that time of the week. And then there's driver dispatch and other systems that are going to happen more closer to that event itself or the period of time to ensure that these drivers and supply are available at that time. So those are feedback loops where now, based on historical data previously, because of the linear structure, you are saying, okay, on every day between 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., there's demand. That's the lunch traffic. And from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., there's high demand from a food order perspective. Ride sharing is the same, right? Ride sharing is slightly different. In the mornings, it's about it starts at around 6:37 and goes up to 9 a.m. where there's peak rise. And then in the evenings, it's again that 4 p.m. onwards to almost 8 p.m. where there's a peak period. So you need to know those patterns, and that data keeps coming in, and then you need to adjust. There, for example, during the day, there's a lull, at least in ride sharing, in the afternoons, post lunch. And so in food delivery as well, there is a lull. So those are feedback loops that come back in. In nonlinear agentic models, now they're able to react to that in real time. Here, what you're doing is you realize it and then you adjust the model to say, okay, I'm going to now reduce my supply during these non-peak times and increase supply. But somebody is looking at the data and then taking action on it and then implementing the new version of the model. Agentic systems are doing it in real time. They're adjusting and they're learning. So they're able to do it much faster and much better. So there is a huge advantage in terms of speed and time and efficiency in terms of how you accomplish this.
And how about accuracy?
Accuracy is an important part. So you hit the nail on the head. A big question for all of these agentic models is how accurate are they? They have to be accurate because if you order food, you want the food that you ordered to show up at the time you ordered, right? Similar for a ride. You can't get that wrong. And these models, I think, have to go through a learning and training process. So for that, you'll need the right sandbox or experimentation framework in order to test it out, make sure that it's working well before you roll it out. But that, I think, is a standard process of any tech rollout. So I don't think that you will put out something that is 80% accurate. And these models, existing machine learning models, are actually pretty good in terms of higher level of accuracy. So even you taking that and transforming that into an agentic real-time adaptive model, I think that should be fairly accurate as well. I'm not too worried about that aspect of it. It's the question of when it doesn't know what to do, what is the answer it's going to give? That's what we have to be worried about. And in that situation, that's where you need that human oversight. You need that monitoring, you need that auditing and tracking to ensure those checks are in place and avoid those situations.
Yeah, and have you encountered any situation when the feedback loop has really tanked the model? Like I was reading about YouTube, and the recommendation engine was initially built on only the watch time signal,
Right.
but then later it was identified and found that the watch time is not showing accurate videos. It is started showing more sensational or polarized or extreme videos to the viewers, those who are actually not interested. It might
Right.
just hook them up for a couple of minutes or so, but they were not interested in watching.
Right,
So
right.
later they rectified it by putting on more signals like light and different other signals. They combined and made it work. So
I think that's the disadvantage with any model and any system, right? The less number of variables, the higher the chance that you're going to skew in a certain direction. We see this in the world today, where there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of incorrect news.
yes.
Systems that are now looking for news and this type of information are going to be misled. And how do they differentiate? They don't know what is accurate, what is not accurate, what is true, what is false, right? And so they are going to use that incorrect information and they are going to populate that into some of these results. And I think that's the disadvantage. It's dependent on us. Any system is only as good as the input you provided, right? And that's a human issue. We need to make sure we are giving it the right training data, the right information for the model to make the right decisions. It's not the model's fault that is providing wrong information. It is the human's fault who gave it that wrong information.
So more training. First of all, identify the use case and then how the model is going to behave, and test for all the use cases, corner cases, and everything is very important. Right?
Which again is always how you do technology rollouts, right? But I think identifying the purpose and ensuring that you are building it out for that right purpose. But here is the complexity, right? And here is where the challenges come in as well. There can be, even today in existing historical data, there is bias.
Yes.
And no matter what, you'll have to, that's going to get incorporated to some degree. So how do you now improve upon it to avoid that bias? There's misinformation. There's data privacy issues. Like, for example, if an agentic model is integrating into multiple different systems and code bases, let's just take a simple customer support service issue, right? And they want to issue a refund. Does it grab the payment data, and can it have access to the payment data? And then what's it doing with the payment data after that? Is it compartmentalized and erased, or is it using it for some other purpose? So there's potential, all those things need to be checked and need to be managed, and it gets more complex and exponentially increases the more systems that, if there is multi-agent orchestration and more systems it touches. But that is something that's where the human aspect comes in. And that's where the people managing the model, designing the model, and implementing the model need to consider all these factors and then make sure that they are checking for it. You will get it wrong, but that's okay. You learn and then you correct it. But that's kind of how you put certain guardrails and you put certain checks, and it's continuous, logging, monitoring, and auditing of it.
Very well said. And I'm just wondering that in this autonomous world, right, evolving world, every day something new is coming, and compliance, regulations, and guardrails. What are the best ways to keep up with all of these for the autonomous system?
If I knew that answer, Jazz, and if I can keep up with the pace at which it's going, I would love to hear it. So here is my perspective on regulations. Again, it's going to sound in a way counter to popular opinion, but I think regulations will always follow technology. Regulations cannot create technology and should not, in fact, put constraints on technology before the technology has had a chance to evolve and develop. It has to come in at the right time. A simple example is even ride sharing, right? If regulations were allowed, ride sharing would not exist today. Because I don't know if you remember, but in the early days of ride sharing, all states sent cease and desist orders to both Uber and Lyft that they should not operate. And because existing legacy, there was a structure for taxis, and that's what they knew, and they had created a model around it, and they wanted to continue that model. Now, you looking back, that model sucked, right? These cars were horrible, they were dirty, they would fleece you, they would not respond to you if you hailed them. And, who knew who was driving it, and every time the picture on the dashboard of the driver never matched. And so there were a lot of risks. And then these systems came in, and then they put in the regulations to say you should validate and check the driver. And these companies run background checks, they run criminal checks, they make sure that the licenses are up to date. Any violation means that they're removed from the platform. Taxis still don't do that.
Yeah.
So, the technology needs to be allowed to evolve, and the customer, the users actually will vote on whether this is good for them or not. Once they say this is good, then you apply the regulations to help improve it and make it safe from a customer point of view. Because at the end of the day, what are the regulators doing? The regulators are taking care of the consumer, the users, and the customers. And they want to protect them and make sure that they are safe. So in this kind of environment with this agentic technology as well, I almost draw an analogy to how the internet itself has evolved, right? If you see over the last 20 plus years, it's gone from HTML to CSS to JavaScript, and then there's, how do you do domain names? How do you do protocols? How do you do payment data, PCI DSS? Then CCPA came in, 5 years back. It didn't all happen at the same time. It continued to evolve. Yeah. And I think we'll need regulations and standards similarly for these agents across different domains, talking to other agents in different domains. What are those protocols? What are those regulatory standards around data and private data and so on? And I think it's the responsibility of the large tech companies to help create those standards and even help create those regulations around it. But I don't think that should be put ahead of the evolution of this technology in a way that curbs the technology.
Yeah. Again, this is very valid and something very different I have heard from a lot of crowd of leaders. This is something extraordinary, that regulation shouldn't come beforehand any development or beforehand any evolution, right? It should go hand in hand.
It should go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And it should be an enabler of it rather than, seen as a constraint. The moment you're constrained, you're going to hurt the technology.
Yeah, to all the regulators.
Oh no, now I have a target on my back.
Try to. I mean, that's a very valid point. I cannot deny it.
It is. And the other example is in California, we went through this Prop 22 situation a couple of years back, where regulators wanted to protect driver rights.
Yeah.
Right? And gig economy workers and their rights. How it went about was not great. But the intent of the regulators was good. But the models that business was offering and what some of the drivers wanted were two different ways of. But then you reach a resolution and a compromise and figure out what is right for all participants in that ecosystem, and not just come up with a regulation that's going to create such a tremendous cost on the system that actually at one point some of these companies were thinking of just walking away from it, right? You don't want that situation. You need to encourage businesses to grow and expand and continue to offer this. But you need to protect the rights of those drivers or those consumers. And how do you set that up? And I think some other states learned from the California experience and they developed those models. Washington did it. New York went through a couple of trial and error attempts before they got it right. And then the other states then figured out how to do the IC plus independent contractor plus benefits model. So now drivers get independent contractor benefits, but they also get, the benefit, independent contractor flexibility, but they get the benefits on top of it. So I think there is a way to achieve that. Regulators need to keep that in mind.
Yeah. This can happen in any organization, just for an example, right? There is a difference in between the business and the technical team. There is always a difference. So maybe regulators, if they start learning more about technology and how it works, might solve this gap a little bit, but that's very important.
But it's also unfair on the regulators to expect them to know everything,
yeah,
right?
That is very
I think
unfair.
that it's a responsibility of the business. I think it's a responsibility of the companies. It's a responsibility of the businesses to inform the regulators, teach them, help them understand the model, help them understand the pros and cons, and work with them. Lyft actually did a tremendous job on this, and Lyft had a fantastic, regulatory government relations team that actually worked and had tremendous relationships with them to help educate them and bring them up to speed. And, super thrilled to have been part of that amazing group of people. But that's the approach I would recommend. I won't talk about Uber. They took a different approach in the early days, but now, under Dara, they've done a tremendous job and they've, engaged with regulators fantastically well as well. Mm-hmm. But, in the early days, Uber had a different approach to how to interact with regulators, which kind of probably impacted the rideshare industry a little differently than what would traditionally have been the approach you should have taken.
Yeah. And you mentioned about drivers' benefits, right? So that reminded me of talking about Lyft Direct. So that is very fascinating, and I was reading more about it before the podcast and features and all. It's not a small feature. It gives you the full platform, right?
That's correct.
Where the drivers can have real-time recommendations, have real-time payouts, and reduce the manual friction, basically.
Completely.
So do you think it is fair to say that this was your first step towards moving to agentic territory?
That's a fantastic question. I think, Lyft Direct came out of pure customer obsession. The Lyft payments team had done a tremendous job in terms of enabling payouts. Traditionally, it's been ACH payouts. Today, that's still the default way. Not just drivers, but restaurants get paid out on it. The disadvantage of ACH is that it takes 2 to 3 days for the money to show up. So every participant in the system was doing the right thing. Lyft was enabling the payout, the money is gone from the Lyft system, but then it gets lost in limbo, right? It's not reached the driver's account yet. So what we started hearing from drivers is, where is my money?
Right.
The Lyft account is showing zero. Their bank account has not been credited for that amount.
Where is the money?
For 2 days, they don't have money. And these are drivers who need the money for their day-to-day expenses, gas expenses, food and other needs. And that was not feasible. So what the payments team came about is they, in fact, ended up using one of the products that I built at Visa, and my life came a full circle at that point, which was called Visa Direct, which is a much faster payout. It's 30 minutes, within 30 minutes. It's close to real time, but still not real time. And it deposited the funds. And what drivers would do is, at the end of the day, they would do what is called an express pay payment into their account. But it was still, the drivers had to initiate it and they had to do it. So, and at the end of the day, and if they forgot, they would do it the next day and so on. We were customer obsessed and driver obsessed in a way where we said, how do we improve that experience? And the bottom line that it came down to was, we wanted drivers to get paid at the end of every ride. At the end of every ride, they earn a certain amount of money. They should see a notification telling them that money has been deposited in the bank account. And that was the goal. And then we said, if we are doing that, why don't we build a platform around it that will enable other benefits. Why don't we give them a bank account? Why don't we give them the opportunity to save? And by the way, they're using it primarily for gas, for food. So for those categories, can even give them a reward. And so that's how that concept came about. And I think this was human desire, human ingenuity that made that happen. I think agentic solutions can achieve that outcome. Can they come up with ideas to build a platform? That still requires a human team to engage with multiple participants to create the framework and the structure. But the agentic solutions can identify what are the driver needs, where are they spending, how much can they benefit, what is the cost to them for offering a ride, and how can companies reduce that cost while giving them higher revenue earning opportunity. So that balance of what can a driver do to maximize their revenues, what can a driver do to lower their costs so that they are more profitable when they engage with one of these organizations, that level of learning insight can be done by these agentic solutions.
Right. That's amazing. And it is so good to see, right? You have been doing things for the people, right? So drivers would have been really very happy getting this feature from Lyft.
They were. And the results showed it. We had an increase in driver hours, a significant increase in driver hours. Once we launched the product, and that itself was a clear indication of the preference for the platform and how certain products can drive that preference for the platform.
And it is such a motivation, right? That you are just seeing your money wherever it is. So the challenge is solved. Where is my money? For 2 days, they are not even aware where it is lying down. So so that's great.
You launch these products, you feel proud, you feel great about it as being first to the market to do it. But technology can will get equalized over time. Others will offer the same thing, and over time, everybody will have the same level. So technology can help give you an advantage and give you a leg up, but over time it equalizes, and you need to keep consistently going after what is that value to that driver, what is the value to the customer, and keep figuring it out. That is where we should all be spending time.
Right.
We should not be spending time on the tasks of data analysis and coding. And I'm saying that on purpose because there's a lot of fear these days that AI and all these agents are going to replace humans. No. We are still going to spend our time trying to figure out how can I create more value for the participants in the ecosystem, using my products. What can I do better? While the agents do all these repetitive tasks that frankly we don't need to spend our time on.
Yeah. I mean, that's such an insightful discussion, and
that's a whole discussion for another day.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of great points you have mentioned. One of them, which I can remember, is ROI and outcomes, right? So leaders expect, they do not really care, right? Do you really care if the system is agentic, full agentic, SaaS, dynamic? If it is driving the outcome, it is having great ROI, then it works. And then we try to upgrade it further. So from your vantage point, from your experience, what are the 3 high-level ROIs which any leader should look after before actually building any agentic platform?
See, I think at the end of the day, it boils down to what is the value that you're creating through this transformation or this new capability that you're enabling. And is that your company is becoming more efficient? So this could be productivity gains, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting productivity gains in engineering or customer support.
Yeah.
It could be higher throughput in terms of, there is more products being sold and more products being developed at a faster pace and more adoption, which grows your revenue. Or it could be leading to more revenues, or it could be lower costs, right? Which is also related to the efficiency and productivity gain. Now you are looking at what is the cost of creating this agentic solution. How much do I need to invest and what does it take? For legacy companies, there is a transformation that needs to happen and there is a cost that goes with it. The This is why startups always have an advantage, because they're coming off a very different cost base. They're funded by investors who are willing to subsidize that cost for a certain amount of time. And once they grab the share, they'll be more successful. But you'll have to make that cost, whether that is a transformation, whether that's a net new build. So then now you're determining the ROI on it in terms of, am I getting the value from it for the cost? But here is the mistake that we make. ROIs are usually within a time period. They're looking at a 12-month ROI. But this model is so different and is the way of the future that I don't think you should look at it from a time-bound perspective. Because once you implement this agentic model, let's say there's a productivity gain and an efficiency gain, that's going to be consistent, and it's going to continue, and it's going to continue to give those gains over how many ever years, right? And so that is the true value of it. So measuring that against capital investment cost at this point in time and trying to do a simple ROI is not the right way to do it. I think that you need to look at it as, this is the future of the company. I need to get there, and I need to set up my organization to get there. And as a leader, that's an investment that you have to make. And my request is to all the leaders out there that, again, as I said earlier, the time is now. This is the time to make that investment. I wouldn't try and figure out all these aspects of it. I would ask the teams, trust your teams to take those steps and start working your way into it. There is going to be a cost to it, but the return on it is going to far outweigh the investment that we're making in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree to it, and focus more on the long-term outcomes than just the shorter version.
That's absolutely right.
Ashwin, if you have given a chance today to build anything which you have built in your previous organizations, how differently you'll do today? If you have any example.
Oh, that's a fantastic question. If I have to rebuild it, I'm pretty proud of all the products that I built. The one thing that I will call out, which I feel, and at the time the technology was also not very conducive, was, I'll go back a while, was at Visa. We were doing this whole mobile money solutions in emerging markets. And while the advanced markets like the US and payment infrastructure advanced markets, US and Europe had chip technology and so on, and the shift to NFC and Apple Pay, contactless payments, was fairly straightforward. In emerging markets and developing markets, you did not have the infrastructure. And so, but mobile devices were all over. And so mobile wallets to mobile wallet payments were getting pretty popular. M-Pesa is the one in Kenya that's the best example. Visa did this acquisition of a company called Fundamo and enabled solutions and built a product called M-Visa on top of it at that time. I think that would have been a product that could have been extremely powerful globally and universally, where there is any mobile wallet can talk to any other mobile wallet across any communication environment and exchange funds. And I think that was a product that was a little ahead of its time, was, all the participants did not see the value of it. But today, I think that could have been a super powerful product as well, that would allow you to, any customer within a network, outside of a network, across networks, across geographies, to have money movement. I think that would have been
wallet to wallet. Yeah, the use case seems to be pretty interesting. And you're talking about a decade ago.
This is going to make me sound old, but this is
no, I mean, just
about,
to see where we
let's say it's a decade. About 10, 12 years ago.
Oh, yeah. So I think the use case is pretty interesting, right? That wallet to wallet.
That's exactly right. And today, even in the US, now you say Venmo is very popular, but it's not, there's not universal adoption. Zelle has come about, and that allows, but again, it's done through a constraint of a financial institution. And you can't use Zelle anywhere else. So there is still that global money movement interoperability issue. Obviously, you need to have controls in terms of AML, KYC, etc. But those are easy to do with technology, right? So now think about an agentic network that can make this happen.
Yeah.
It can happen in an instant.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to do. This is what boggles my mind. I'm like, wait, why wasn't this technology available at that time? We could have crushed it.
Yeah, there are so many interesting use cases where, they can really create an impact if we do it now, because the technology is so powerful now.
Correct. And so think about it. Like your Apple phone, you are putting boarding passes,
Yes.
you have Apple Pay, you have, IDs and so on. Think of a wallet that now allows you to interoperate, with anybody else.
Yeah.
And you use any relevant network. If it has to go through the bank network, let it go through the bank network. If it has to go through Visa, MasterCard, let it go through that. If it has to go through Western Union or someone, that's fine. But, you can, now you have the technology to bring this all together.
Yeah. So technology is making things so interesting now, and so much scope of development is still there, right? And I think we are moving more towards multi-agent operating system as well.
That's correct.
A lot of companies like Relevance AI, Langchang, they have kind of developed whole platforms for agents, retrievers, orchestrations, memory handling, and all of that. So what do you have to say about it? Do you think this is going to be very important for any organization to transform from static SaaS to dynamic agentic platform? In the journey, do you think this is really important, such kind of network?
I think it is critical. I think if you're static, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Sorry to sound so dramatic, but that's the reality of it, right? Because as I said, you are now hearing from investors and others about these startups, which are, 1%, 2% companies that are doing the work of what used to be the domain of, 50, 100, 200 people. And they're building great products. And I know of so many startup founders who are building platforms, and these are big, consumer service platforms with just a handful of people and using AI capabilities. But to the point, I think that this multi-agent orchestration, I think that established companies have an advantage. They have the data, they have the customer base, they have the knowledge in terms of what to build next.
Yeah.
They have to have those agents, and those agents have to be interoperable with and integrate with other agents. Because otherwise, this vision that I was talking about in terms of the wallet and the money movement, it cannot go across networks. Then you're still stuck in that same siloed way of operating where you have to be within this bank or you have to be within this network. There's no interoperability at that point.
And that's not going to work
that won't work
in this world.
Because somebody else is going to come and
Yes.
figure out how to interoperate it, right? So my recommendation would be build the agents. Obviously, you have the advantage because you have the data, you have the knowledge, but then take it to that next level. Now you're giving your consumers more value. And you can charge for that value and you'll make more money out of it and your revenues will grow. But that is what this multi-agent world is going to open up for everyone. And now it becomes a question of who's providing ultimately the better customer experience.
Yeah.
And that's what is going to win. And as a user and a customer, that is super exciting for me.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting actually. And we didn't touch base on ezCater's smart ordering. So that was one of the best things I have seen. I mean, you have completely changed the workplace dining. So tell me more about it. And from 10 people to 10,000 people, right, in the workplace, you served that kind of people. So what was the motivation? Little bit, let's talk about it and how you took that smart ordering to another scale altogether. I'm very much interested in knowing the whole story.
This is a great question and thank you for asking. I think the motivation again came down to the simple point of customer obsession, right? Because if you think about it, I struggle when I'm ordering food for people, if I have visitors at home or we have a get together and if there are more than 10 people, I'm like now breaking my head in terms of, are they vegetarian? Do they eat, are they vegan, gluten-free, peanut allergy, shellfish allergy, multiple things. And then, budget and what kind of food do they like. So now you look at it, there are so many variables into it. So I think, somebody reasonably smart, reasonably capable can order for 10 people. Now at 20 people, it becomes a little bit more challenging, but maybe you can get away with it. At 25 and above, you are like struggling, right? And now we're talking about companies that have thousands of employees who need food and variety every day, catering to all these variables.
Yeah.
And then there's a budget factor.
Yes.
So the model was someone had to take responsibility for it. And the way we looked at it is that there are multiple personas that order food in a workplace. But think about it as usually your executive admin who's ordering, or an office manager who's ordering on behalf. Now, if they're ordering food, let's say there's a 100-person office. If they're ordering food for 100 people, they'll have to manage through all these combinations. They'll need to look through various choices. Do they want Italian? Do they want Mediterranean? So it was a do-it-yourself model. Yeah. What we wanted to, our vision was very simple. We wanted to change it from a do-it-yourself to a do-it-for-me model. And we were looking at what is the solution that's going to help us go from a do-it-yourself to a do-it-for-me model. And we had the good fortune of partnering with Salesforce, who's a leading provider of agentic solutions. And the teams came together. And, when you talk about innovation and new things and the sparks that come from it, that's when if you put smart people together and with a good idea, that runs. Yeah. And that's what happened. And so the teams came together very quickly. They're like, this is amazing. Let's figure out a way where, if you think about the solution that we showcased at Dreamforce in the keynote, it was very simply that somebody just puts it saying, I want to order for 50 people. My budget is $20 a head. And give me options that include some vegetarian, gluten-free and so on. And an agentic model quickly creates, and it has access to the restaurant data, it has access to their meals, it has access to the dietary and item level details, and then it incorporates that and it suggests option. So it says there's Italian, there's Mediterranean, there is
that happened through Olo integration, right? Menu and all of those details from the restaurant.
So those are the order management systems, and there are multiple providers. Yeah, Toast, there's Olo, there's Chowli, there's different ones. And so I think that these systems need to, again, not be limited to one particular type of provider. I think this has to be agnostic across whatever order management system that you use. And so imagine now that in the demo, you could quickly see that this person says, oh, this is great. Like, give me the Mediterranean option and make these changes. So it becomes a very casual, interactive way of doing that ordering. And then the agent can go ahead and even, place the order. That's when the order management system comes in, where now through these Toast or Olos of the world, you are pushing the order management system for this large order. The agents also need to have an idea, because there is a factor of time. If you suddenly say, I want food for 100 people in 2 hours time, the restaurant may not be able to do it, right? So they also need to look at what is the capacity of the restaurant, their ability, and how long will it take them to prepare food. So in a normal world, today's world, a human has to go and look up all this data. Yeah. But in an agentic world, this can happen in seconds.
In milliseconds.
And that is the true value of this, right? And so not only does the customer experience become easier and better, but the entire process becomes easier. The participants, the restaurants and their staff have it because they know that they're not going to get like a 100% order with 2 hours to go and then they're scrambling to make that. Or it's a bad experience where they say, we can't do it. And then you need to go back to the customer.
And it reduces the manual friction as well. Like manual errors as well. You have ordered something for 100 people. Someone heard something wrong or something like that. So I think it was such a win-win situation, right? Use case for all the parties, I would say.
Completely,
that. Yeah, pretty interesting story. And thank you so much Ashwin, for joining us today.
It was my pleasure,
a
Jay.
gold mine. Before we actually wrap up, I would request you to tell one book or recommend one book to our viewers which can really change their perspective and help them move towards agentic platform.
Towards agentic platform. Oh,
Or maybe in short, you can tell any book regarding AI that can really.
I'm going to actually go back to something that is, in my mind, a way of thinking and a way of how you operate. And I think this book transcends, technology. It transcends time. It's great. It's actually the book is called Good to Great, and it is a book that I keep going back to and keep relearning, because it's not just about one particular aspect. It's a whole series of things, and as a leader I depend on it quite a bit in order to reinforce some of those first principles and elements. And I think there will be a new version with some AI examples in it, but it's an oldie that has withstood the test of time and has withstood multiple industry evolutions and changes. And the reason why I'm suggesting it is, I think we are at the cusp of such an industry transformation and shift with this AI and agentic technology. And I think there's a lot of fear and worry around it. But I actually think that it is a path to greater achievement, and it actually frees us up to do more creative, more advanced achievements, rather than do the mundane things. Previously, if you think about it, in the olden days, communication was through telegraph, and then, the telephone developed, and then there were switchboard operators. They were all pretty important. But as communication evolved, those jobs went away. You don't need somebody to take a call and change it in the switchboard to connect it to another person. Systems can do it. Now, fast forward, today we feel that we are, doing so many things, but, there are certain jobs. Why do you need to take a call from a customer on an issue and try and figure out, okay, what were the errors of, why can't a system do it? Why do you need to actually write code? You design, but let the system do it. So the mundane tasks get eliminated, and human nature and humankind has always had the ability to adapt and evolve on top of it. So we are basically raising the bar, and the bar is going to get raised no matter what. And now I think that the potential for us to do something more at this new level is going to be fantastic. And I think that's what excites me. And so the book is actually transcends these shifts and transformations that happens and will continue to be relevant in an AI future.
Yeah, I think very great suggestion, because this can help in every era, right?
That is
every
correct.
era of transformation, every era of evolution. Thank you so much, Ashwin. Thanks a lot for coming to the show. Again, it was a gold mine.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.